I'm Marissa Coccaro, and I am the founder of Mighty Mouse. The Howl takes place a little bit after the zombie apocalypse, like enough for life to have like settled down again, and everyone's figured out how to live in this new world. And the main conflict of the show is that a fry cook breaks into the radio communication station and starts playing old time music. This is a huge no-no because resources are very scarce, and it's not like you can go out and like drive to Florida to pick up oranges anymore because you won't get there without becoming a zombie yourself. And so it's the head of the radio station comes in, and they get into this conversation about why you can't simply survive to survive, that you need music, you need art, you need stimulation. You can't just, make fried beans every day, and that's not a life. And I think that is really important, because with all this technology and with the amount of activity that's happening on our planet right now, we're getting very close to these conversations of what do we do with our resources, because they are limited. So I think it was it's a very good tie-in to where we are as a society, and it's also just like a fun story. I thought that it would be easy to produce with little to no budget, which is what we had. Um, it's two actors. Uh, Basically, it took place in one room. Once again, it was a stage play, so it's a very conversational drama, which is something that I felt comfortable doing. So I basically thought that it was just a really good way to like wet my feet, and figure out what I didn't know and still make a good film. Like you want to be able to learn, but you don't want to like learn and not have a film that no one can understand. So I literally, it fell into my lap. I was working with students at Columbia College on one of their practicums, which is like a thesis for filmmakers. And I was sitting, we were just in an office in the Columbia building. It was a production meeting, and a professor came in and was like, I have a DP that doesn't have a project. Does anyone know of a director? And so I like raised my hand and was like, do they have to go to this school? Because I have a bunch of projects I want to do. And so I stepped out into the hall and I talked with them. And the DP is a man named Ryan Dixon. And he was very, very open. It was really lovely that he wasn't too judgmental of my projects because he didn't know me, and I feel like he could be. He was also like very willing to help because my very first thing was like, I've only been in the film world for 6 months. There's like a lot of learning that I need to do. So he was great in that. And then he found the gaffer, who is the person who does lights. From my time in the theater world, I knew a sound mixer, so I brought him in. And then from other productions I had done in the past, I had an AD come in. I brought in a producer. So it was a lot of like, I had worked for these people in the past, so they were willing to work for me. I think that if I had never worked for them and I had just showed up at Columbia one day being like, I have a project, come work, like nobody would have done that. So it's definitely a give and take world. Is you're gonna have to spend money. I feel like before we started the Howl, I did a lot of research and I like read all these articles, and there are so many articles out there that are like, oh, you can make a movie for free. I was like, no, you can't. No, you can't. Like, yes, I got the equipment for free. Yes, I got the crew for free. Yes, I got the locations for free. But you have to feed these people. Like, I think the only way that I could have done it absolutely for free was if I had done less than 6 hour shoots at a time so that like I didn't have to feed my cast and crew. But then there are also like a bunch of little things that'll just come up. Like we needed some fake blood. So we went and we got all the ingredients for that, and that cost like $6. But then the person who was like making the fake blood messed it up. So like we didn't even get fake blood. And that had the potential to be very upsetting to everybody, but we're just like, oh well, guess we don't have fake blood. But I had to, like, at some point I had to hire a U-Haul van so I could get all of the equipment back to where I had been able to borrow it from, and that cost me like $60. So I think that this idea that you can do a film for absolutely free is bonkers. Like, it's just, no, it's not possible. Things are just gonna happen. So like, yeah, be prepared to spend money, but do it smart. And then don't be afraid to make your movie if you can't afford an effect. You know, like, yes, I think that fake blood would have helped in the storytelling in one of the segments, but it wasn't necessary. Movie was still fine. Like, one mistake didn't ruin everything, but it definitely, it's all about compromise. Really don't allow the set to get toxic, which almost always means like putting a clamp on your ego, and just not like realizing that you're part of a team and that this is a whole thing. The other thing is that on not making a set toxic is saying you're sorry. Like, even if it's not necessarily your fault, or if just like whatever gets everybody moving forward again is what needs to be done. The blame game doesn't help anyone ever. So it's one of those things where like the producer and I were not communicating on what each of us needed to be doing when. And so by the end of the shoot, we had a very tense relationship. And it occurred to me that it was like, I should have just apologized. Like, it didn't matter that we like had both been in the wrong. I should have just, because the longer it takes to clear the air, the harder it is to breathe. It was so tedious. Like, I didn't understand how tedious it becomes. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made is that I wanted to get it out there as soon as possible because I wanted to move on to the next thing. I knew that the Howl was never going to be perfect. It was never going to be like, it wasn't going to make or break my career. It was going to teach me a lot of things. So like, the faster I learned, the faster I could do better the next time. That's not a really good mindset to have, so please don't have that. But what I really should have done is I should have like had our deadline for when we wanted the fine cut, and then waited a month and like not really thought about it, not done anything, and then gone back and watched it again with our editor. Because when you're watching it 100 times a week, you know, after 4 weeks, you just become blind to some of the hiccups you have. I mean, there were things that I would point out within the first week, and our editor would go, oh, we'll fix that during the fine cut. Like, that's a little thing we can fix later. And then by the time we got to the fine cut, I had forgotten about this little mistake, you know, because I didn't write it down and we didn't fix it right away. And so we submitted the film to Short of the Week, and they sent us back really wonderful feedback that was like, your sound is not as smooth as it should be. And then I watched it and I heard all of the tiny little hiccups and bumps that were happening along the way. And it was just like, crap. Like, I can't believe I missed that. It was right in front of my face. I also learned from editing that I need to have much more communication with the DP. One of my bigger regrets is that there are some shots where Helen, who is the female character, is not always in focus. I didn't quite realize that the DP thought it was Carl's story and not Helen's story, and it was Helen's story. I thought I had identified all of the mistakes I had made while on set, and then I get into post and be like, oh, there's a whole bunch of other mistakes I made on set that it didn't even occur to me. So that was difficult. But that is what this movie was about. That's what this whole year is about, is getting movies out there and learning so that the next movie is even better.
Okay. All right. I'm just.
I had the very modest goal of getting 250 views within our first week. Within our first week, we got 75 views, which, as far as I can tell, accounted for the cast, the crew, and like immediate family members who watched it. And then, um, so we released it on YouTube and Facebook. And so after about a week, I wanted to get those views up, so I put in $10 and boosted the post. From that, we got an additional 100 views, which is really wonderful. But I think that was a mistake, because when you would get this post on your Facebook feed, you could see that it had already been out for a week and only 75 people had watched it, and that, I think, discouraged people from watching it. Like, people are more likely to watch something that's been watched a lot, because then it's like, oh, a bunch of other people have seen this and liked it. So the next time, I'm hoping to boost the post as soon as we launch. My goal is still 250. My goal is going to be 250 until we break it. And then after that, the goal will be 500. So I think it was important to set a goalpost, because then I could measure up how well I did. I think if I had just released it, I would have been like, oh, we got 100 views, fantastic. That's not in this age when everyone has access to it. Um, what else did I learn from launch? You need additional content. Like, you can't just have a film anymore. You have to have an interview about it, and you have to have backstage stuff and like bloopers and stuff like that. And that's really great for building momentum. So like, you kind of want to release a couple things. You don't want to just release a movie. You want to build anticipation and then release the movie, and that we didn't do very well. So next time, we're definitely going to try to build that anticipation in a more calculated way. I think the hypothesis of Mighty Mouse is that you can have mainstream stories told by diverse groups of people without it necessarily being a diversity movie. We can all do it together, and we can all make really great stuff, and it doesn't have to be about, of course, it's about who we are, but it doesn't have to be about what we look like.